lift landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO classified. UFO classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Well, hello, my friends. Always happy to be here and warm everybody up on a killer radio station, KCOR. Even though Tina doesn't like to talk about her birthday, I want to publicly say happy birthday, Tina. Her birthday was yesterday. She does an exceptional job. I love this station, as I say, on every episode. I appreciate the hard work she does, and I thank her for being a great producer. I have had, of course, a busy week. I have just added 6 boxes, big, huge boxes of documents to my library that is quickly expanding. I now have the largest holding in Utah, and it's getting up there. So this is a place where people can come and learn, do research, and I will be establishing a non-for-profit to really do what I can to educate the public. I am excited. If you ever make it to Salt Lake, please stop by and see me and see the wonderful work that I have. A majority of that is due to Barry Greenwood and Jen Aldrich. Barry Greenwood is my friend and mentor. He will be on the second hour, but the first hour I am bringing on Christopher O'Brien. And if you don't know about Christopher O'Brien, then I don't know what rock you've been living under. He is an exceptional author. He is a musician, which is another reason I like him. He's incredibly outspoken. Again, another reason I like him, he has written a lot of different books. Stalking the Herd is incredible. If you don't have that, get it right now. Order it. Also, Secrets of the Mysterious Valley. He's an expert in Native American legends, cryptozoology, secret military activity, folklore, and he was one of the first investigators at Skinwalker Ranch, which is important. He is undertaking a groundbreaking new project in the San Luis Valley, and I Christopher, without any further ado, welcome back to the show. It's been a long time.
It has. A lot of things have been happening since it's been almost a year. And I have a ton of stuff to report.
Okay, we'll get on it then. So you're up to some really, really cool stuff, and people need to understand how groundbreaking and important this is for the study. So, go for it.
Well, for the last 12 years, I've been, developing this idea of creating a hard data monitoring setup, a triangulated camera and scientific instrumentation to monitor hotspot areas around, first of all, North America, and then expand and go worldwide eventually. And the team has had a series of members that have stayed on for a while, dropped off, come back on. And a couple of years ago, we were very, very fortunate. When I say we, I'm talking about my main partner in this data monitoring project, Wayne Hollenbeck. Wayne is a lawyer. He also was involved with contract law, with contracts for exotic black, project materials for various kinds of projects. And so he's always had an interest from kind of an insider's perspective on the field of unidentified aerial phenomenon, anomalous aerial objects, UFOs, what have you. And we met in 2007, and we decided to join forces and develop this idea of setting up triangulated cameras and scientific detection gear to, moderate to monitor hotspot areas. So I'm happy to announce that we've added a really talented engineer, software developer, ex Disney employee, and computer scientist who's spent the last number of years. He's put in probably about 5,000 hours of time and written over 10,000 lines of code. So we now have finally detect motion, lock onto motion, track motion, and go into record mode during events like this. So we have poor man's tracking. Basically, you see bounding boxes on the Tic Tac Nimitz footage, for instance, and you can see how the object is always kept in the center of the screen. Well, we have a system now that does that, and along with that particular data driven and motion tracking system, we also have triangulation software that places an object that's being observed by two or more cameras and sets of gear into an actual physical place in Google Maps, so that we can obviously be able to gauge its altitude, speed, distance from the cameras, and place it in a physical place in the environment, determine its altitude, azimuth, those sorts of things. And we have these units called MSDAUs, which is a acronym for multi-sensory data acquisition units. And what they do is they are going to be monitoring changes in the Earth's magnetic field, changes in the Earth's gravitational field, and then eventually down the road we're going to be getting recordings of extremely low frequency acoustic waves, which is a part of the investigative and hard data monitoring process that a lot of people forget about. When these objects make right-angle turns at high speed, when they reverse direction, there's an incredible impact and effect on the environment through the atmosphere. And generally you can't hear it because it's at too low of a frequency. So what we're going to be doing is having PZM plate mics that'll be recording down below 50 cycles, down to 10 cycles, so that we can combine acoustic signatures with changes in the magnetic field, changes in the gravitational field, combined with pretty impressive high definition optics. One of our cameras goes down to 0.005 lux, which is down pretty low. Obviously, it's going to be useful at night. And I am happy to announce that we have a GoFundMe campaign going, and I am literally traveling to the San Luis Valley, which will be our first location of America's #1 UFO hotspot, our best kept UFO secret. Mm-hmm. I estimate 1 in 50 or 60 sightings there is reported. It's so commonplace, people don't think it's weird, so they don't report it.
Right.
So we're going to be there at we have a camera at the world-famous UFO Watchtower and on a cell tower. Initially, next spring, we're going to be putting in a camera out by the Great Sand Dunes. This is exciting. No one's ever done it. I'm not getting that much notoriety about it. I think people are scratching their heads going, this is too good to be true or something, but it doesn't matter. The team is going to be laughing our way into the history books if this pans out the way we think it will. We're very, very excited about it. I'm headed to the San Luis Valley in a little over a week to put in the first 2 cameras and get the show on the road.
And that is so kick-ass. I just have to say that I love it. And I've always, as long as I've been publicly in this, I have just scratched my head as well, just thinking, what are people doing? I mean, how can, we've got this archaic reporting centers, or, I don't know what we're doing.
It's like trying to drive a car forward by looking in the rearview mirror. I mean, data is only as good as the filters that you have to separate wheat from the chaff and garbage in, garbage out. I mean, there's only so much you can determine anecdotally. This is real time, hard scientific data gathering, and there's no substitute for that. It's never really been done. The Project Hazel Insight in Norway has had some successes, but they're not dealing with the kind of activity that we see in the San Luis Valley, the variety and intensity of unusual phenomena that's observed there. We're also going to be monitoring natural phenomena so that we can start to differentiate between real swamp gas from the $2 billion worth of methane underneath the valley opposite where our camera is. The piezoelectric discharges from the quartz in the mountains on extremely cold and dry nights. Other things like just to give an example, the Rio Grande Rift Valley, which goes all the way from the Gulf of Mexico to Leadville, Colorado, is the second largest rift valley in the world. It runs up the eastern side of the valley. And the work of William Corliss and Michael Persinger and Paul Devereaux talking about earthquake lights and natural phenomena that's often mistaken possibly as UFO activity. We're going to be able to determine, sets of data that will allow us to differentiate between natural occurring light phenomena, ionization effects, and actual real trufos, if you will. And, of course, that whole right side of the valley, as you're looking north, the whole eastern side of the valley is also a military training route for our largest low-level flight training route in the United States, the La Vida Military Operations Area, where we train our pilots. It's pretty much, I think, a foregone conclusion that our tax dollars gets trotted out, from the black world and flown around there to see how people respond. And it'll be pretty interesting if we're able to get some of that get some data points on that sort of activity as well. So, it's a multi-use thing. We're going to attempt to, obviously cover all our bases and make sure we factor out all potential false positives. We want to be plugged into the Bolide Center, the NASA Meteor and Bolide Center. We're going to be plugged in in Phase 2 with Flight Radar 24 so that we factor out instantly any transponded conventional aerial activity. Jacques Vallée suggested that we, when we have an event, to have a relationship with Space.com so that we can get satellite imaging of the area in question from the day that these events occur. So, we're really looking at this from a scientific point of view. We're looking at what needs to be done to move this morass of backbiting and backstabbing and cults of personality. All the things that pull this field down and make it really uncomfortable for academia and science to get involved, mainstream scientists and stuff. So
that
this
happens.
is this
Are you kidding?
Real major step forward if we can pull it off.
Oh, I freaking am so proud of you and excited for you. I mean, I I've talked to you privately and said I just can't believe this community, at least the people that are really out there speaking and just the really low-level games that go on. And it does take us away from what we really need to focus on, and that is doing the kind of work that you're doing and the kind of work that Barry Greenwood is doing. And, it's like, let's make some progress. I know we can do that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people are, well, maybe not a lot of people, but there are quite a number of people that are aware of my work with the cattle mutilation phenomenon. And people, ask me constantly, what is it with you and the cows? And, I look at them and say, well, how much evidence do UFOs leave behind, or ghosts, or, hauntings, or, other types of paranormal phenomena? How much evidence do they leave behind? And they say, well, really very little, if any. And I say, yeah, well, with cattle cases, you have thousands of pounds of physical evidence. That's why I'm interested. So, to me, physical evidence, data, this type of irrefutable, unequivocal evidence speaks very loudly. And if this actually, we're able to pull this off, we're covering 5,000 square miles of airspace with no impediments in the way. We're talking horizon to horizon, 365 degrees. If we can cover this area and gather the kind of data that we're set up to gather, and then replicate that gathering data process with other events, what do you have? You have enough data possibly to work with an optical physicist to do a paper. work with some mainstream scientific disciplines to actually publish papers for peer review. This has never been attempted in the field. And, you put an announcement out there about this and you expect, at least a little bit of excitement. I'll tell you, I can't believe the amount of crickets I hear out there and yawns from people. Oh, yeah, it's right over my head. What do you mean? What is a magnetic field? Gravity? Really? You can measure gravity? And it's like, yeah, hello. So, our GoFundMe campaign just broke $1,200. Whoa. We one thing that we're really happy about, Ron Ulch, our engineer, who's designed all the software and worked his ass off for no money. One thing that I'm really proud of the project is we're going to be open source. We're going to sell packages at cost for people to do this in their neck of the woods. And we think we can get the cost down around $2,500 for a entry-level system that will allow you to be your own scientific, evidence gathering process in your own neck of the woods. And eventually what we'd like to do is be at Mount Adams, be at White Sands, be at the Hudson River Valley, Pine Bush, be out in the Black Hills, be down, in some of the cooler hotspot areas in California, up around the Uinta Basin where so much activity is going on. We want to see a network of these data gathering, triangulated hard data gathering facilities so that we can start to create a net and really start to get proactive and gather data that can be analyzed by professionals and, get people like Jacques Vallée excited, get people like, the these so-called, what do they call it, tits and ass? No. What's the acronym or TSS?
TTSA. Oh, dear.
Oh, yeah. Someone said, yeah, it seems like tits and ass. And I was like,
oh,
really?
Baby Joseph.
Oh, sorry. Get people like Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis and these, well, I don't want to call them snooty and snobby, but, maybe we can get some interest from mainstream science and those individuals who are open-minded enough and who are interested in these subject matters and know that there is really important data to be looked at some point and get these people involved. I don't know. I just feel like I get very little respect in this field. I'm too outspoken. I don't put up with the BS that goes on. I call people on their Day.
Yeah.
And,
that's good.
That doesn't endear me to many people.
Well, but you know what, though? I mean, and as we all know, I'm sure I have a lot of people. Well, I know that I have a target on my back because of my article in Newsweek talking about what happened at MUFON and just different things. But I feel the same way you do. If you don't tell the truth and you don't push things out there that need a light shined on it, you're never going to change the field. And we're at a point where this could all just disappear. We're seeing a lot of older researchers pass away with all of their important work. And I mean, then we're seeing a new generation coming into this that is all about the secret space program and the jump rooms and, all of this crap. And it's like,
the bluebirds. What are they called? Bluebirds?
Yeah. Yep.
People, they like it. It's their entertainment. They don't know any better. They think that that's reality. I mean, people would much rather sit around with a jar of Vaseline and look at Secure Team videos or what's that? The Cousin Brothers, third phase of Moon. I mean, that's stuff. Sure, there are some good videos and photographs in there, but for every good one, there's several hundred that are so ridiculous and so easy to debunk. But people don't know any better. That's one of the things that we really want to do is educate people, show them how to differentiate between TRUFOs, real activity, and stuff that's a bird caught at the right angle or some sort of natural phenomena that appears to be high strain. I have a video on my YouTube site of a two-man helicopter entering the frame, and then the light hits the canopy, and because it's curved, it blossoms up like a big silver orb, and it flies across the screen like a UFO. Now, if I had cut out the first 4 frames of the footage, I could have had a celebrated UFO sighting. But I didn't, because that's not why I'm involved in this field, to pull the wool over people's eyes, create a cult of personality, and go me, 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 like so many people in this field do.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm in this to get to the truth.
Right.
And if people have a problem with that, you know where you can put that issue.
Yeah,
and it's
baby.
a personal problem, and you'll deal with it.
Well, and that's exactly right. I mean, it's just like oh God, we're gonna have to talk the second part of our interview, because there's so much, I think, right now that has been taking place. We talked about this last night, and it's just like, give me a break. Let's get over the hype. Let's get over the ego and quit falling all over ourselves and acting like, I mean, I think there are definitely people who are acting like they're groundbreaking and doing all of this stuff. And it's like, not so much.
Well, it's the mutual masturbation societies that are out there that just drive me nuts. You know, and these people, if they don't watch it, they get sand in that Vaseline. It's really going to hurt.
Well, you know, I knew this was going to be one of those shows for the memory books. You have just taken me there. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to keep it lively, you know.
Never a problem with you. But again, you know, that's a good thing. And so I want to talk, we've got 4 minutes to break, but tell people where they can go to contribute, your GoFundMe page, and then also your website where you can get your books, everything.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's like everything else in life. You know, you really have to get the word out in order for this stuff to take off. And so go to GoFundMe.com /UFO DAP, like Data Acquisition Project, DAP -SLV for San Luis Valley. So GoFundMe.com /UFO DAP -SLV.
Awesome.
My website is Our Strange Planet. It is a strange planet. It's Our Strange Planet. And you can get all my books, ebooks, regular books, DVDs of my talks, all that kind of thing. Every little bit helps. I don't do this to make money, but boy, it sure helps to offset costs. I'm gonna be, you know, incurring at least a couple. Well, at least $1,200 is probably it's gonna cost to pay people to climb cell towers and maintain the site, have internet, reliable internet service for the year, and have people, wiping the bird crap off the domes. That we have fake owls that are going to be there when a bird lands on the dome. This fake owl there is going to turn on, hoot, its eyes will flash with lights, and then it'll turn its head. Hopefully, that will keep the birds from landing on the the campus.
that
our
would
first.
do it.
This is our 5th time that we've tried to get this system set up, and I guess the 5th time is going to be the charm because we really have it dialed in now.
Well, and I've already got one of my listeners that said, when you get these this ready to sell for people to use, that he is on it, that he will do it. So those are the kind of listeners that I have, and they are so supportive.
Well, that's good. Maybe there's hope. I just feel like I'm just calling out into the void here sometimes.
No, you're not, and I feel the same way too. But I will tell you, the people that support me, and I want to tell them thank you. They want good work done, and they're supportive of that, and they're not the type of person that's going to be, joining an organization and throwing their money down the toilet. They want to give it to researchers that are actually going to do some good. And, my people that listen to this show freaking rock. I'm Erica Lukes here with Christopher O'Brien. We will be right back.
Stand by. This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes. Erica Lukes. The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified. UFO Classified with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
I'm jumping in. with my clothes on.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb, but if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Learn more at ultimatepartyfoul.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Here's what happened on the last episode of Three Guys, No Ties.
Yes, sir. Did either one of you watch America's Got Talent?
No. When?
Yesterday.
No. Last week, but not
they had this couple on, and they were quick change artists. And the girl's standing there in a dress, they pull it up and drop it, and she's got a different outfit on. And I know these people have to be witches.
Three Guys, No Ties. Wednesday nights, 7 to 9 Pacific on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is your captain. I'd like to welcome you on Jackpot Airlines Flight 1610, service to Lost Wages.
They say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, apparently, they need a reality check done Vegas style.
Vegas, 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 Vegas.
Tune in Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, for Reality Check, hosted by Jessica Johns, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Biggest star in the world, bigger than Britney and Christina put together.
If it's happening on the Vegas Strip, you'll know about it here first.
You are a dirty little fun haver.
Join Jessica Johns as she explores and goes behind the scenes of what's hot and what's not. From the best entertainment Vegas has to offer to national celebrity gossip.
That's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Jessica has her finger on the heartbeat of the city, and she's waiting to share it with you. Reality Check, hosted by Jessica Johns. Wednesday, 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern. She does Vegas right.
Yeah, baby.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. How could you not love him?
Hamilton the Pug's adoption story started at a shelter. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Live for 3 hours every Saturday night. It's a show that engages the mind, makes you think, and maybe even challenge what you think you know. Hi, I'm Jeremy Scott of Into the Paranormal, where we talk about topics that are anything but mainstream, somewhere between abnormal and paranormal. Bring an open mind and join us for Into the Paranormal, live Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation. Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org. This message brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
KCOR Las Vegas.
All the time.
Of course I listen.
I listen all day. It's the best music.
KCOR, the new underground source for news, talk, and music at KCORradio.com. Tell your friends, email them, or Facebook them, or Twitter them.
Hey, are we done here? Because I'm losing my buzz.
It's great. I think it's great. It's great.
The all-new KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Great.
Make a note of it.
It's great.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes. Welcome back. I am here with the spicy, fantastic, intelligent, mother of pearl troublemaker, Chris O'Brien. And I love it. It's a good thing that we didn't reproduce, because we would have the spawn of Satan, I think.
Yeah, that's actually a scary thought, but the mind wanders.
I can't believe I just said that, but oh well, what can I tell you? But I mean, first of all, I just want to say congratulations. I know how hard that you've worked on all of this, and you really are going to kick some butt. And you've got the support of everybody that listens to my show. We'll do what we can to help you and support you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and we're going to talk, I've got some things I want to ask you, but we have somebody on the line that I want to bring in. Steve Padilla he's actually on vacation, but he's on the phone. He took the time to call into the show. So Stephen, how are you?
Hi, Erica.
How you doing?
Chris.
Hey there.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much. You've been posting great things on my Facebook, and you work really hard, and I want to say thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to have you here talking to both of us. What are you up to this evening?
Well, I'm just catching up on UFO news for the day, and thought I'd give you a call and say hi and have a question regarding the mutilations.
All right. Let's hear it.
All right. Well, according to what I'm getting on the news lately, there's a lot of mutilations happening in Argentina right now.
Yep.
And from what I understand, this has been going on for years, and since the 60s. From my information, the FBI has investigated, and they concluded there were animals that were doing it. I mean, that was their view on it.
Well, if
Linda
you're
Moen
talking
Howell
about the wrong,
Linda
report,
Moen Howell.
you're talking about the Rommel report.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
well,
I mean, for that, that's
investigating.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. What's your question?
My question is, why is the public accepting that explanation that it's animals that are doing it? I mean, the proof, the evidence is suggesting that somebody is doing that, not an animal. I mean, how is the public supposed to buy that?
Well, number one, Stephen, the public doesn't even know about this phenomenon. It's something that most people are not aware of. Back in the 70s, yeah, they were, but not now. Number two, when Kenneth Arnold went out and investigated, with a grant from the Santa Fe district attorney, he went out and looked at Personally, he only looked at several cases. He was too disgusted. He would stay in the car and make everybody else do all the work. But out of the 89 cases that they looked at, the media had already created all this panic in the ranching community. And by the time they got out to look at stuff at the end of 79, the beginning of 80, the cases had moved to Alberta. And there were no cases happening in New Mexico where he was doing the field investigative work. What he was looking at was, animals that had died and had been scavenged and impacted by maggot blooms, by birds mostly, and some small animals. And so, there was nothing to see there because no real cases were occurring. He was only looking at cases that had been scared up by the media reports of hysteria, and every dead cow that people saw had to be a mutilation. So, it's interesting how the mystery is self-negating. I just, for instance, today got an email from a researcher who's not a cattle death investigator, but had read a recent article about some what appear to be real cases that are happening near Byron Bay in north of Sydney, Australia, on the coast there. And he was saying, well, we need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And it's like, well, the very first thing that you need to do when you go out on a case like this is look for cut hair follicles. Because if an animal is being carved up by a sharp instrument or a lasing instrument, which is extremely rare, but most of these things are done with intelligence with a sharp cutting instrument like a knife or a scalpel, that knife cuts through the hair. Now, I don't care what bird, what coyote, what insect you have, it's not going to cut hair in a straight line. These new investigators that have come out in the last 10 years, I have been beating them over the head, trying to get them to pay attention and look for cut hair follicles. Nothing in nature can cut hair in a straight line. So that is the number one litmus test to determine the high strange potential of a case. Number one. Number two, getting back to your question about why people believe the debunkers, it's the same thing with the Condon report in 1968. And, people, when they saw the results to the Condon report, they said, oh, that solves everything. Nothing to see here. Let's move along. Well, what most people don't know is Ed Condon was telling people before he even started his study of UFO cases, he was telling people that there was nothing to this and he was going to prove that. So, you can't go into a situation with a foregone conclusion and be closed-minded and be looking for a way to explain things away. And I don't think it's by accident that within 6 months of the completion of the Condon report and the closing down of Project Blue Book, within 6 months you had the birth of the rebranding of the Midwest UFO group that we now know as MUFON.
Right. And also drainage of blood, no tracks around the animals. I mean, it's just mind-boggling to me.
That's all misnomers. It's all misnomers. First of all, these animals are picked up and taken elsewhere, experimented on, and then dropped back somewhere else in another part of the pasture. And they're not all drained of blood. I don't know how many cases I went out. The rancher said they drained my Bessie of blood. I'd grab the rancher, say, okay, help me. And we flip the animal over, and all the coagulated constituent elements, most of the liquid wicks away, at least in the desert where I am. So you don't really have much serum left, but you have a lot of coagulation. And it's all at the bottom of the body cavity because that's what gravity does, is it pulls everything down there out of sight. And when you flip it over, whoosh, it all comes out. So there's a lot of misnomers. These cookie cutter incisions. We have 2 cases out of 10,000 plus that have cookie cutter incisions. And other misnomers. These things are done with high heat. No, they're not. When animal flesh is rendered, when the skin is pulled open by birds, by coyotes, by scavengers, the animal bloats. The skin stretches, and when it dries out, it turns brown. And when the animal shrinks back down, that hard edge looks like it's been burnt. Now, granted, out of the 200 cases that I went out on, 2 of them did show signs of high heat. But you have to get in on a microscopic level. You have to look for sealed capillaries, cooked hemoglobin, boiled fat. These are the things that you look for evidence of high heat, but it's extremely rare. There are animals that are drained of blood. It's extremely rare. The meat is pale, just pale pink or gray. People say, well, there's bloodless incisions. Yeah, if the animal dies and scavengers come and start pulling it apart, there's not going to be any blood because there's no blood pressure. Out of 200 cases, 40 that I looked at were done with intelligence. Somebody did that to that animal. Out of the 40 that I feel were real, that somebody mutilated that animal, 7 or 8 kind of freaked me out. Were high strange. Okay, what's that? Do the math. That's 3%, 4%.
But that still tells you that the phenomena that somebody is doing that. You have an intelligence doing it, whether it's just that percentage, low percentage, and that's all you need. You need one case to prove it.
Yeah. Oh, no,
and you've proven it, and I want to thank you for that.
I'm not saying that there's not high strange cases. I'm not saying it couldn't. It's not. I'm not saying that aliens couldn't possibly be coming and doing it. But what is the motivation? If they want genetic material, which is the popular theory that's being promoted and has been for 30 years by certain individuals, if they want genetic material, why don't they just sneak into an abattoir or a slaughterhouse and drain off all the genetic material they need from the vats of blood and other constituent elements that you'll find in a slaughterhouse? Why do they have to go sneaking around in pastures? You know why? Because it's not aliens. That's the least likely possibility in my mind of who's doing this. What is going on is we're seeing a very well orchestrated, a very professional job of monitoring the human food chain for prion disease. That's what I think's going on, and also for residual elements of radiation in the environment. That's what's going on here. These recent cases in Florida are perfect perfect evidence to support that conclusion, that we are seeing a secret environmental monitoring program that's been going on since we tried to weaponize mad cow disease in the 60s. It got loose into the environment and is scaring the bejesus out of the government.
Okay, that's
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, and thank you very much, and thank you, Erica, for all your hard work in researching and bringing information and knowledge to us. We really appreciate your hard work, and you too, Chris.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you and your hard work. And I will have Chris on again very, very soon so we can continue this topic. I think this is really important, and thank you so much, Stephen, for calling in. Have fun on your vacation.
Thank you.
Take care. And
all
Chris,
you have to do is read Stock in the Herd. You'll get it all.
I know, but and the prion disease. I mean, that is something Dr. Colm Kelleher has a
Yeah, he's a real influence on my work and a real, I can't applaud him enough and thank him and acknowledge his work. He really, really, he opened my eyes with his book, Brain Trust, which I think is really absolute. I mean, it's required reading for anybody that's interested in the quality of their food and the relationship between beef and human health. I had suspected a link with mad cow disease all the way back during the height of the mutilation waves in the 90s, and with the outbreak of mad cow disease in England, and also hoof and mouth in England, where they destroyed 4.5 every head of cattle in the UK was destroyed, 4.5 million animals. And when I found out that they were cremated with 600, 700, 800 degree heat, and the prions can live up until 2,500 degrees, that was a bit of a wake up call.
All right.
And of course, the man who discovered prions and named them, Dr. Stanley Prusiner, won the Nobel Prize for Medicine in '98 after they'd already burnt up all the cows. So, hats off to Colm. I really do think Colm did a great job with that book, and I'm amazed that the book didn't just blow people out of the water. I mean, it disappeared without a trace.
That's interesting. I really respect him a lot as well. He's an incredible person. I think Bigelow had or has a great team around him, but we've got a little bit of time left, and I want to touch upon some things I've seen on social media with regard to you and Jeremy Corbell, because I've been watching this exchange. I think all of us have, and just sitting back going, what in the crap is going on? Yeah.
Well, I don't. I've always had a problem with the way the so-called Skinwalker Ranch, just the name, for instance, to me it's really a misnomer. It's a sensationalized misnomer. The Utes have nothing to do with Skinwalkers, and it's a Dene term for the Navajo and Apache, and just to begin with that, but. The kind of whitewash that's been going on for 20 years, 23 years or whatever, around that case has really been disturbing to me. And when a filmmaker is doing a film about a place, you don't just cover one side of a story if you're a proper journalist. You look at all sides of the story. He has never attempted to contact the guy that broke the story, Zach Van Eck, who wrote the articles in the Deseret News. He never bothered to contact Junior Hicks, who has been investigating the area for over 50 years and was the first investigator on the site.
Amen.
He did not contact Ryan Layton, who was also one of the first investigators from the local area there on the site. He didn't bother to contact all these wonderful investigators that have been traveling thousands and thousands of miles a year to ride herd on the activity at the ranch and monitor the ranch activity. He did not bother to contact any of them. When I asked him about this, he said, well, it sounds like you wanted to be in my film and you are all angry about that. And I said, no, I'm just looking at this as a journalist and wondering why you're not covering this in a proper journalistic way with journalistic integrity. Why are you only giving one side of the story, which is the Bigelow NIDS side of the story, which we know has been a whitewash from day one? Of course, they did publish some papers, and it was my efforts and others who dogged them so much publicly to put up a website, to publish some papers, to be transparent. And it was kicking and screaming that they ended up doing that. And to me, anything having to do with the ranch that comes from Bigelow is covering up some real sensational stuff that's being hidden from the public. And I'm not going to go out and get myself in trouble for the umpteenth time and talk about some of the things that have happened on that ranch that are being covered up. I'm not going to do it. But you know darn well that Jeremy is not going to be covering that information. And he's not, doing due diligence and being objective, being an objective journalist and using intellectual honesty and integrity.
It was really surprising to me, and I mentioned this on my last show, but I had Dr. Eric Davis on my show, and I have also been in contact with the new owner who specifically said, yes, there have been pretty significant medical injuries on the ranch.
Yep.
And,
more than that.
Yeah. And I said that with Dr. Davis, and who's now involved in the research as well. And it was interesting because one of my listeners posed the question to Jeremy, on Twitter, and just said, this is what Erica Luke said. And he said, oh no, I'm the one with my, my finger on the pulse. And that didn't happen. And, I would know about it. And this is how rumors get started. Something to that effect. And I read that and I thought, what? And I told people last week, I sent him a private message and just said, Jeremy, please have the integrity or professional courtesy to talk to me about that before you do that on social media. That would be the nice thing. And so it was just, it just kind of took me aback because I want to support people. I want to support the film. I wish them great success, but I'm just a little bit surprised.
So do I. I think we need to get word out about the case, but I think it should be well-rounded. I think it should be all-encompassing. Anytime you have a filmmaker that's a star of his own film, you got to kind of wonder about motivation. There's very few people who can get away with that. I'm a filmmaker. I've won, film festival awards with some of my work, co-producing It Could Happen Tomorrow, the Disclosure Dialogues standalone piece. I've been involved with, some pretty cool projects in the video and film realm. And when you see a filmmaker who has two middle names and needs to be in every other shot in his film, a fairly large percentage of his film he has FaceTime on it. To me, that's just that smacks of maybe kind of some worthiness issues, maybe, or someone that really needs to be somebody. And he's not Michael Moore. He's not funny. So there's very few people that can get away with that, as far as I'm concerned, having a significant percentage of FaceTime in their own film. So that being said, I wish him all the best. I love the work of George Knapp. He's been a huge, one of my real, in terms of journalism, he has been, such an influence on me. Yes. And I just admire him and his journalistic integrity. I just admire that. And, this is no slight on George because I know a large percentage of the film is based on the book that he and Colm Kelleher wrote. And I applaud that. And I think that we need to get more people aware of the ranch and in the mainstream. But I would really rather it be a more even-handed examination of the case instead of being something that is really one-sided and slanted in a way that could be misconstrued by some people that really know what's going on up there or think they do.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, and this is the point that I was shocked because I was up near the ranch and I interviewed Junior Hicks a couple weeks ago. I mentioned that to you and I talked to you, and I was taken aback by the fact that he wasn't included in any of this, and
it's criminal.
I don't get that, and whatever. But we know, both you and I, that we will make sure that when we get a really exceptional piece out there, that we will include people like Zach Van Eck, who's been on my show, or all of these people who contributed. And
Ryan
put it on the map.
Weatherly, Ryan Burns. I could go down the list. Dave Rosenfeld, Ryan Layton. There's people that have done just months and months and months of work up there, have good video, have good stuff, good evidence, visual evidence, for instance. Great, you combine all that stuff, and it's really newsworthy. And to totally ignore all that, to me, really is suspicious.
Well, the whitewashing might be a good way to look at it. I'm sure that there's some incredible stuff in there, and I am excited to see it. But
too. I can't wait.
But
I'll tell you, he thinks that I wanted to be in this film, and he was trolling me and dogging me and insulting me by saying, "Oh, put your big boy pants on. Just because you weren't in my film doesn't mean you should go blah, 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 blah." And I'm like, look, dude, because of some things I know about you and your background and some of the things that you've been involved with and balls that you've dropped, even if you had paid me, I wouldn't have been in your film because, number one, I'm not interested in having any sort of public face on films or TV projects with the ranch anymore. I've gotten in too much trouble because I found out things that certain people don't want other people to know, and I just won't go there anymore.
Well, and I think you're a lot like I am when I'm interviewing people or, I'm schlepping all over. It's like I have my camera set up and it is on the person that is talking. They're very rarely am I in the frame because this isn't about me. This is about the person that is conveying a critical message.
Right.
And so I think that there will be something done to highlight the people that have worked so hard.
Yeah.
Specifically, Junior Hicks. He is my freaking hero, and and Ryan Burns. And I talked to Ryan Burns about this, and Ryan Layton, and there is such a great group of investigators here
and just absolutely dedicated. I mean, I was the first outside the area investigator up there to talk to Terry Sherman. I was the very first one. I only spent one afternoon with him because, Bigelow ended up, buying the ranch and putting in a non-disclosure, was getting Terry to sign a non-disclosure agreement. But I got to see a pristine case, and I know that there's something going on up there. It may have morphed over time, but when I went up there and I had a pristine look at the case before the Zach Van Eyck article came out, I was really excited because it was the first case that drew me out of the San Luis Valley. And unfortunately, I got totally aced out of any sort of investigative work up there.
Well, you freaking rock. And we've talked about this before. It'd be really fun to have you on the show, once a month, just you and I interviewing people. I think that would be really cool because you know so much and you are so freaking spicy. I love that.
Well, it's time. The time for pussyfooting around these acts in this field is over.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And congratulations on your project. I will keep everybody informed about it. And one of my friends in chat has been posting your links, and I'll keep doing that. So Christopher O'Brien, you freaking rock. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Absolutely. And I'm Erica Lukes here on UFO Classified. I will be joined the next hour with my friend and mentor, Barry Greenwood. We're going to talk about his trip to the Center for UFO Studies and how important it is to preserve history. I cannot wait. He has taught me a lot about things. So you can check Barry Greenwood archives out. Thank you, Chris. I will catch you in the next little bit with Barry Greenwood.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at UFOclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
just landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazell was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified. UFO Classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome back to the second half of UFO Classified. As always, this show is certainly making some waves, which is a good thing because we need to be questioning things and making sure that people have good information, which seems to be it just non-existent in this field. I will say that Christopher O'Brien is he will be back on my show very quickly because I want to talk to him a little bit more about some of the things that take place in the San Luis Valley and in the Uinta Basin and I want him to teach all of us how to go out there and collect data. That's important. I am joined right now with somebody who's very dear to me. He is my friend and my mentor. He is teaching me a lot about how to preserve history, which is critical right now, and I have a library that is something people need to see, an archive. I love it. Barry Greenwood wrote a groundbreaking book back in 1984 with Larry Fawcett called Clear Intent, the government cover-up of the UFO experience. He has been feverishly archiving, finding research from people that are passing away, people that are this close to throwing things into the trash, and he and Jan Aldrich and a handful of others have been scanning this and getting this out there to the public. There is nobody in the world like Barry Greenwood. And Barry, I am so excited always to have you on the show because you truly are a hero, and people need to understand the work that you do. And nobody does what you do.
Well, I felt it necessary to start trying to preserve the subject after so many years have gone by because I realized that since libraries and universities weren't very good at saving information on the UFO topic, someone had to pick the cudgel up and go with it and try to take care of as much as could be taken care of. And it's a very large subject as it's become. There's a lot of information on it out there, and all you have to do is look on the internet and see how many sites are devoted to it, and not to mention the books and journals and other papers that have accumulated over the years.
But I think you are a one of a kind. I think you and Jan, because there aren't people, I can't think of anybody else that has done everything that you have done and you've accomplished. And people need to understand that from preserving the history from a historical perspective, you have done more to contribute to this field than anyone.
Well, we've tried. I mean, I had the fortunate luck of being in touch with some old timers on the subject and some new timers too, who had contacts and links to accumulations of information. The early days when the first generation of curious people came along on the subject, they got the ball rolling. They subscribed to some clipping services, kept in touch with the Air Force, formed their own organizations, and from there on, it was just a snowball effect of increasing numbers of reports that came in. Some of them were quite baffling, and most of them were quite ordinary, actually. You can see that in the Air Force's statistics, but even UFO organizations will tell you that most reports are explainable. It's that small percentage, that 5 to 10%, depending on who you talk to, that arouses curiosity and is to me well worth saving.
Well, and you've saved a lot of things, including the pancake.
Yeah.
Which you have to just tell that story because it's a classic.
Yeah. In 1961, there was an incident in Eagle River, Wisconsin, involving a fellow named Joe Simonton, and 1961 really wasn't a busy time for the subject and all. So when something unusual happened, it rather stuck out. And in this case, Mr. Simonton claimed that he had encountered a landed UFO. And his story was, to put it in a nutshell, that he was in contact with the beings on board and claimed that in exchange for some water, they gave him alien pancakes, or whatever you want to call them. And they looked like little flat pancakes with air holes in them. And for all the world, they seemed like something you could eat. But, of course, these were special, according to Joe. So everybody became involved in it. NICAP investigated it at the time. The Air Force became involved. And despite the fact that it's a rather unlikely report, it's gone into the folklore. And the Air Force even saved their fragment of the pancake and had it on display in, of all places, the cafeteria at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I guess that's the best place you could put it. Fortunately, nobody stole it to try it out. But I came across a different piece years ago when longtime researcher Ted Blocher had decided to exit the subject. He'd been in it many years, and I would say this is around the late 70s or so. He was edging himself out, so he was trying to make arrangements for his records, which were vast. He was investigating the subject since the early 50s, and had accumulated a lot of typescripts of clippings. And in those days, photocopy machines weren't very good, so he would go to libraries in different cities where he took his job. He was an actor. He acted in plays. And in his off time, he would try to find old UFO reports. So he would get them, write them down longhand, and type them up when he was near a typewriter. And there are literally thousands of pages of his typescripts of old press letters, materials that were difficult to copy in those days. So Ted, leaving the subject, decided he was going to split his files into two. Most of them went to the Center for UFO Studies, or before that, NICAP. He was with a group called CSI in New York up to the mid-50s. When NICAP came along, CSI's files went to NICAP. They felt NICAP could take over at that point. So NICAP broke up in 1980, and their files had to go somewhere. And through a convoluted means of negotiation, they ended up with the Center for UFO Studies eventually. So part of that was Ted's files, the normal reports, the CE1s, CE2s, discs, daylight discs, and so on. The other part of his files were called HumCat. And he had specialized with another researcher, David Webb, in looking into so-called humanoid reports, CE3s, as Alan Hynek labeled them. And they accumulated quite a mass of material. He kept the incidents on index cards, of which there were several thousand of them with these reports summarized. And he also kept raw files, which contain more detailed descriptions of many of the incidents, not all of them, but the ones that had more substance to them to investigate. So Ted wanted those files to be near his colleague, Dave, and Dave lived in Massachusetts, which is where I live. So Dave wasn't able to take the bulk of material. It was something like 10 boxes or so at the time, and Dave didn't have room, so they asked if I could store them. And I said, sure, send them along. So they all came in the mail one day, and I straightened them out, refined them. There were a lot of duplicates in them, so I just got them down to a core group of records. And Dave could consult at any time he wanted to. And that's where those records have been since the 1980s, up in my office. So between those two, Ted was able to pass his material on. Included in the Humcat files was a file that I recognized. It was Eagle River, Wisconsin. And I looked at it. I figured it would be photocopies and tear sheets from magazines and all. I was stunned to find that it was the actual NICAP investigative file for the story. They had a fellow in Wisconsin look into it, a Judge Carter, who actually obtained a piece of the pancake and had it analyzed. And what was in the file was a piece of the remaining pancake. Now, there was never anything more than buckwheat pancake. There was nothing alien about it. However, it's a piece of folklore in the subject that's irresistible. I had been asked by a representative of the Wisconsin Historical Society to pass it along, and so they could put it on display. And I said, well, I'm very concerned about separating files like that. I'm trying to preserve them, and I don't know what's going to happen if they go to some group that doesn't take care of UFO material. Often organizations have been reckless with UFO files. They just, after a while, lose interest in them, and bad things happen to them.
Right.
So I said, well, I'm going to take care of this for the time being. The society knows where I am, and eventually I can arrange something to make it available for display, perhaps. But I didn't want to split the pancake from the actual file. So it's still here, and recently I took a little selfie of it.
Yes, you did.
And
I love it. I love
and sent it along. It looks a whole lot bigger than it really is, though. It's really only the size of a thumbnail, but in the picture it looks gigantic. And I did not take a taste of it. Never.
Are you sure?
Positive.
Okay. All right, then.
I don't think much of eating pancake that's over 50 years old. I don't know what would happen to me.
It's kind of like eating a Cheeto or something,
A very old Cheeto. Yeah.
I love that, and I mean, it's just every time I talk to you, you have more to tell me. I'm stupefied, and I love it. I love this learning process, and it's so critical to teach younger people the importance of history, because we're, as I mentioned on my last segment, we are very close to losing a lot of good information, and then the Corey Goods and all of these people that don't have any merit are going to take over the subject, and we can't have that happen.
Yeah, I mean, there have been some catastrophes or seeming catastrophes in recent decades. I think the most famous example of that are the APRO files, Aerial Phenomena Research Organization's records that were cared for by Coral and Jim Lorenzen, who were longtime researchers in Arizona for many years. And they both, over time, they grew older and both eventually passed away. And the files were put into others' hands, and they more or less dropped out of sight. They haven't been available for serious study for a very long time, at least since the late 80s. And, that, among other things, we think about when considering the records and how they should be handled and what we should do about it. And since we can't get at things that have been made unavailable, we try to work with the things that are available and make sure that they don't disappear over time. As long as duplicates appear somewhere else in different places, they'll always be safe. If that was done with the APRO files, we wouldn't have a problem. They'd be in a scanned form or a photocopied form somewhere.
And so I want to ask you, with regard to open source material, I know that there's been a big effort to get these files out there. How difficult, or explain why some files can't be put out there and some can, and what the motivations are.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of the problem, especially with published information, is copyright. A lot of magazines and books have been copyrighted over the years, and you can't just up and duplicate them and throw them out there as a freebie for everybody to use. I mean, it violates the rights of the people who originally created the works and put them together. They have some rights to seeing where the information goes and if anyone else is trying to capitalize on their hard work. So that's why copyright law exists. And it's reasonable. I mean, it should exist for books and all. I'd hate to see someone take a published work and just run wild with it while the copyright is still on. They'd be in trouble anyway. But other works have dropped out of copyright. Enough time has gone by where there is no law covering them anymore. And you can see that, I think, on eBay and other places that do vanity press runs of old books by Ruppelt and Kehoe and all. They're not around anymore to complain about it. So in that sense, their works are made widely available, but it's somehow it's just not right that someone else is able to make a buck off of it rather than the original people. But that's the way things are. So that's an issue. I think it's one of the big issues in making things freely available. Other matters include personal privacy. Files on case investigations contain people's names, addresses, phone numbers, and all that they legitimately don't always want to see out in the public because you don't know who's going to come from where and contact them and maybe cause problems. That's another issue. My concern and others' concerns in the subject who are working in the whole effort is to make sure that the files are both preserved and duplicated. Preservation is important. I found that when I traveled out to Kufos recently in Chicago, that these old records in time age. They turn brown, the staples rust, clips rust, things go wrong, and they have to be fixed to make sure the files are nice and available and won't fall apart again. They need to be mounted, they need to be pasted up on pages sometimes, but they need a lot of work. And that isn't really being done very well in this subject. Admittedly, there are groups of records that they're not in a large number of places. Kufos is in Chicago. Other people have their own personal collections and all. But it's not easy to find information on the subject. If you go to the average library or university, they just haven't collected that kind of information. Or if they did, they've thinned out the holdings because subject suffers from peaks and valleys of interest. And in the valleys, existing libraries need to be circulating things that people want to look at. And if there's a temporary lull in concern about a topic like UFOs, they'll just thin the shelves out, move books along, and put something there that people do use. So,
and that is alarming because I was very grateful that the University of Utah Special Archives had Dr. Frank Salisbury's work. I could go up there and I could learn from that, but they have such tight reins on things that when other people are saying that they're going to be donating their archives to universities, that makes it incredibly difficult for those of us who are trying to research the subject.
Yeah, when you do research in the subject, you're usually doing it in your part-time available. You don't have a lot of free time to deal with it. You usually have to make a trip somewhere, and you have a limited amount of time. I've seen that in my own trips. You have to squeeze as much into what you have available as you can. So the existing collections often have strict rules and regulations on using these things. Sometimes they can make you wear white gloves so the oils on your hand won't pollute the paper, for example. I've seen that a number of times. And they only bring out a limited number of things for you. If you want to browse files, you're not going to be able to do that at most of these collections. Some are more liberal than others like that, but generally that's they make you adhere to the laws that they have governing their holdings. So I used to like the idea of putting things in universities where they would seemingly be safe, but there's an issue of access, for which to me has to be cleared up before collections go there. I've known some collections that were accepted as donations and then dispersed, broken up, given away, or even in some cases thrown out. And we don't want that to happen. So we've got to be certain of what's going to happen to these things when they're seemingly put in a safe place. We have to be sure they're safe. And the remedy to that partly is scanning, duplicating. That's the second part of the preservation duplication process. If you take original records and you make digital scans of them, something happens to the originals, well, the scans exist. You have reasonable images of them. And they're safe that way. Especially the more distributed they are, the better. So that's the two-part effort that myself and others are involved with.
And that is incredible. And I think that getting this out there, that's important. And I've noticed that in some of the circles in this subject, there are little factions, and they like to keep the information just kind of flowing between certain people. And for me, and I know you feel the same way, this is about making it accessible to the public.
Yeah, well, you mentioned copyright earlier and all. Yeah, that is an issue. It can be a difficult problem for an archivist to deal with, because you want to make things available, but sometimes you just can't for one reason or another, and you have to at least preserve it. And as far as duplicating, some have been forced to make it privately available instead of public. I know there's an organization in Sweden called AFU, and they have both private and public holdings. And the public holdings, they were given permission to put up by the owners. So that's open and available. Nobody's going to complain, but they do have to keep information private, because others complained and they said, no, I don't want that public right now.
And so how would one get access to the private holdings?
Well, it's like you do with any other delicate topic. You have to negotiate with the owners or the possessors of the information and convince them that you're not going to abuse the information by trying to capitalize on it or something. And and there's reasonable things. You can write an article and make a little bit from a magazine and all, but
right.
Other than that, they don't want someone taking advantage of it.
Right, and I hear that music, and so we are going to break. I'm Erica Lukes here with Barry Greenwood. We will be back after this break.
Stand by. This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes. Erica Lukes. The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified. UFO Classified with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
1 million miles till midnight. A story of timelines, artificial worlds, simulated races, and the galactic imprint, and the destiny of a blue world called Earth. 1 million miles till midnight, written by Solaris Blue Raven, is a journey through the mind's eye which allows the reader to surf a wave of technological and multidimensional intellect, revealing a bridge between conscious design and the truth. A multidimensional bleed-through awakens the world of artificial intelligence to set sail into the frontiers of a vast multiverse, morphing planets and terraforming ascended worlds beyond the linear programs of a fated race. 1 million miles till midnight will awaken, inspire, prepare, and enlighten one to the many multidimensional states of consciousness and worlds we reside in. With every cell and atom, we are this truth and multiverse. 1 million miles till midnight. Written by Solaris Blue Raven. Available now at Amazon.com. Don't wait. Get your copy today.
It's great. I think it's great. It's great.
The all-new KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Great. Please make a note of it. It's great.
If ever a breed was affectionate to a fault, it's the Golden Retriever. They're people dogs, pure and simple. And the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada needs your help. If you would like to volunteer, foster, adopt, or donate, go to the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada's website at grrsn.org. That's grrsn.org. Or call 598-GOLD. That's 598-GOLD.
There is a world outside that which we live in, a realm where fact and fiction collide. The Paradigm Matrix. The Paradigm Matrix. Hosted by Willie Miranda. Every Friday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us, even now in this very room.
The 1 hour show that will surely leave you hanging on the edge of the rabbit hole. The Paradigm Matrix explores a universe of topics from UFOs, cryptozoology, conspiracies, as well as all things paranormal.
Enter a world of the twisted and deformed.
Friday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. The Paradigm Matrix. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network, where fact and fiction collide.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back. I am Erica Lukes. Happy to be here. Stick around for a great night on KCOR. Willie Miranda will be up next, and then Tina Marie and Solaris Blue Raven. It's a great night on KCOR. I love looking in chat and seeing all of my friends, and I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to share information about the show, for contributing to the show, making donations. You are all incredible, and I say this all the time, but I'm here because of you, and I love it. I'm excited. I'll be speaking in Michigan in a couple weeks with my friend Nick Redfern. We might be causing some trouble. It'll be great. So if you're out in that area, come check out my lecture. I'm going to be speaking on archiving my trip to Heshtalon and much, much more. I'm here tonight with my friend and mentor, Barry Greenwood, who has done probably the most important work in the world with regard to preserving this history and making sure all of the hard work of many, many people who have come before us is there for each and every one of us to learn from so we don't repeat mistakes. You can visit greenwoodufoarchive.com to see his exceptional work. And Barry, I'm just always honored to have you on the show because you are such a brilliant resource for all of us.
Well, I appreciate it, but I would really like to see a lot of what's out there fixed and taken care of and duplicated and preserved, even if it's someone's own personal records. Let's say you have a local investigator who investigated a couple of dozen sightings over 10 years or so. That stuff is just as worthwhile at preserving and duplicating than the larger collections. If anyone like that could do that with their own holdings with a three-way scanner, photocopier, whatever, and that would be very helpful. And get that sent somewhere centralized where it can be made available and it can be planted in other areas, preferably a half a dozen or more different locations, then it wouldn't get lost. Someone wouldn't find their records thrown out after death and their involvement in a topic is completely forgotten. It would be terrible.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that has been so, I don't know, when I talk to researchers who are older, and a lot of them, their families are so turned off by this, by their obsession, or they don't have living heirs. There's so many things that happen, and their whole lifetime, their whole body of work, the subject they care so much about is gone.
Yeah, that's a huge problem. I've known several people who've had their records entirely destroyed. There's not a trace left. So nobody wants that to happen to anyone. Even if, suppose, the person themselves had lost interest in the topic or entirely changed their minds and didn't want to have anything to do with it anymore, the earlier material that they did work on still should be preserved. So to give you an idea of how involved this can be, I made a trip to the Center for UFO Studies in August, and I scheduled 3 weeks to do that because it was a huge collection, and a lot of it hadn't been preserved or duplicated very well. It's been more or less dormant since about 2010 when the original center headquarters had broken up. So
and can you give the listeners, and sorry to interrupt you, but give the listeners a little bit of background on the importance of CUFOS?
Yeah, well, CUFOS was begun essentially by Dr. J. Allen Hynek, along with a Chicago area researcher, Sherm Larson. And there was a need after the big 1973 wave for what Dr. Hynek called a scientific organization. Something that would have scientists involved and directly looking into reports and analyzing them and hopefully getting funding to use equipment, photography, recording equipment, and so on to get better information about UFO reports. Up to that time, it was a slapdash. It was relying on people with cameras handy during a sighting to take a picture, and the pictures often weren't very good. Tape recordings sometimes would be used during reports, and people would talk into the recorder and give real-time descriptions and all. But when the center came along, there was an opportunity to really upgrade the information. And from 73 to 1986, when Dr. Hynek passed on, they amassed quite a load of information, and they also absorbed records from other groups, namely NICAP, which had gone under in 1980, and the records became available, and the center was there and able to take all those records. It was a large amount of information. NICAP had been in operation from 1957 to 1980. So you can imagine how many thousands of reports were in that. They had been around for the mid-'60s wave, where literally tens of thousands of sightings were reported, and they had to follow up and collect report forms and letters and whatever they could to document all that. So the center ends up with what I counted anyway a few weeks ago is around 58 file drawers and dozens of boxes full of information. The file drawers run from early history to roughly 1993 or so, when the investigators' network really began to ebb away, and and there weren't as many volunteers around as there were before that. But they're all on record, and I was stunned at how many there were. I'd open a file drawer, and it'd be a 2-foot drawer packed with files where you couldn't get another folder in. And part of the reason of going out there is wanted to take care of it, make sure that some of the classic cases were duplicated for others. So, and that's within reason too, because the center has regulations and concerns about people's identities again getting out. Those are private records often. So the duplication effort was done with the concerns about privacy in mind. If there's any access to them, I think they need to be cleared through the president of CUFOS, Mark Rodiger, to make sure that, again, there's not going to be any abuse. But overall, we're trying to make them so that they just never get lost again. So I tried as hard as I can to do as much as I could in the time available. I had 3 weeks this year. Last year I had 2 weeks to sit down and from end to end copy as many files as I could. I did 16-hour days, no real breaks. I think one day I made a trip to Northwestern University and to just look around there. I know Alan Hynek's files, part of them, a small part of them are there, but Mark had already seen what was there and said that wasn't really of significance. There was far more interesting Hynek material at the center, so I concentrated on that. But other than just short breaks like that, I just continuously sat at a scanning machine and ran them through. And you have to take the files apart, stick labels back on, remove staples to make sure the batch feeding process goes well. And I owe an enormous thanks to my host there, Mary Kastner, who has a wonderful scanning machine and access to the records for that whole time. And hopefully I can get another crack at it before anything happens with the files, like moving away somewhere or being put into storage. You never know. But this is a matter where time is of the essence. So that's what I've been doing. And this last trip, I counted somewhere around 30,000 pages of files scanned, or records of pages. I think there were around 1,800 individual scan files, roughly about 15 pages or so per scan per batch feed. So we made a big dent in it. I've been able to duplicate 1960 through early 1963, months-long swaths of other records for different years. Was able to run off virtually everything they had on NICAP's early history from 1956 to 58, plus a fair amount of correspondence between Donald Kehoe, J. Allen Hynek, and others who had been associated with NICAP and CUFOS over the years. So it's quite an interesting collection of material, but it's just vast. It's large. It'll take a long time to go through it all. So that's what's been happening on that front. Hopefully we can get more help to do something like that.
Well, and I've got somebody, in chat that is saying, well, how can we volunteer to help this? And I think this is good because when I'm out and I'm lecturing, I always mention you and Michael Swords and Jan and just like get involved, do what you said, find local research and reach out to all of us. And then let's get this put in a place where all of us can have access to it and learn from the work of others.
Well, the way I figured it on this last trip with the CUFOS files, I was able to do roughly 10,000 pages a week. And that's really concentrating on it. I realize other people can't work that kind of intense schedule, but even if it was somewhat reduced from that, you could still, in a finite amount of time, get all of that done and get it done well. A little advice would be given on how to do it and how to be efficient about it, and especially to get the quality down very well. I've found a very interesting thing that I ran into years ago with photocopying, where sometimes you'll get a document or a set of documents where if you copy, you'll find parts of them are missing on the copy. And that's because part of the paper might have been written in ink and the rest of it was written in pencil or in colored inks or things like that. And when you try to duplicate those, if you're not careful, you can lose part of that document simply because the exposure time is different. So you have to account for the different styles and inks and exposures on the paperwork you're doing. And then it'll come out. It'll leap right out at you. All I had to do was push a button, and I found that practically invisible pencil writing lit up. Nice black and white, and it was beautiful. And it told me we weren't going to lose that part of the document that would have been lost years ago with the older equipment. So with things like that, that's what needs to be advised to anyone volunteering for an effort like that.
Well, and that is, I will get people involved, and I know I can do that. And I love learning from you. I wanted to ask with regard to getting all of the work, and you do a fair amount of work with AFU, and tell us what you provide AFU.
Well, AFU is an archive in Europe, and they are very interested in preserving the subject. They've been around since 1973, and they do a fantastic job of accumulating. I lost the mic. Hold on. There it is. They accumulate and make available to people in Europe copies of records, and they'll also do it on request from other parts of the world. But of course, they're limited in what they can do on that. They provide some scans. If someone wants hard copy, they can get that too. But they have the same problem as everyone else. Their system is taxed, and now I think their funding has been cut back somewhat. The Swedish government used to help them, but now they're not in such an easy position to do that anymore. So one thing I've been doing with AFU is in the realm of preservation of periodicals. There are a lot of UFO periodicals out there. There's many thousands of titles of different publications, and they're hardly available to anyone, or they were in the past. It was very difficult to find them. AFU decided to launch a program along with several other individuals, Isaac Coy, Jan Aldrich, Fran Ridge, pooling resources, trying to get all of these periodical runs together to make them available. And that's where the private-public aspect comes in, where the public ones are out there, we've got permission. Private ones are still there. They're duplicated, but they just can't be distributed the way we would like to until someone relents and puts them up. So AFU will copy most of a run. They have large holdings of periodicals. They'll copy what they have, and then when there's things missing, they look around to see who else has them, and the missing numbers are made available to them. And I did some of that work at CUFOS on this recent trip, where I was able to find missing numbers from holdings that they have that they want to put up, but they want to put them up in a more complete format. So I have some of those runs now that I'm still sorting through these scans, and it's going to take a while because there's so many of them. But once it's done, these missing numbers will be submitted, and the runs will be more or less partly filled in, or maybe even totally.
And that's incredible. And I wanted to ask, I mean, I think that you and I have talked about this a lot. For me, I see different motivations for collecting data, or, and so do you ever, wonder if people that are wanting data have maybe not the best agenda for this subject at heart.
I don't know what motivations exist for everybody. I can only speak for my own because I'm me. And my motivation is that when I was young, I wanted to find out about the topic. And libraries, public sources didn't have the quality of information that I thought should have existed on it. You'd see books in drugstore book racks and newsstands and all, but the really good information, I thought, came from people who were directly involved with the investigations, like Donald Kehoe, Edward Ruppelt, and so on. That those weren't as easy to find as people thought back then. So I said to myself that someday we're going to get all of this data in a place or places where anybody that wants to access them can get them easily and won't waste a lot of time looking around for things that just aren't conveniently available. So that's what my motivation was in doing this kind of work, to pull it all under an umbrella or several umbrellas, so that some poor kid interested in the topic, looking for something to investigate that's fascinating and odd, won't be stymied by lack of access or lack of sources.
And I love that about you. You are, I mean, honestly, I'm speechless because I don't know if I've ever met anybody that has that much commitment and that much integrity and does things to help the subject, to help other people learn. And I just want to say, like, as far as I'm concerned, at the next UFO Congress, you should be Researcher of the Year, Researcher of a Lifetime, because you have contributed that much and you've done it from this pure place.
I don't see any other motivation for it for me other than that. I just couldn't stand not knowing, and I'll cross the deepest river and sail the deepest ocean to find information. That's what this is all about.
And you have, in your career in this, you've found out some very puzzling things, and you've seen the way secrecy works, especially with regard to our government. And it's that. What is your take on what the United States government or factions of the government are trying to do with this subject?
I think the most realistic thing that can be said about it is that I've found that they really didn't have a great deal more background on the subject than we did. They may have different information. They may have better quality information, having access to military incidents and events. But as far as answers go, I just don't see that government has any sort of a final answer to the phenomenon. It happens. It's there. Sometimes it's really peculiar, and there is buffaloed by it as anyone else, including scientists on the outside. You can see that in some of the existing records from government sources. They're scratching their heads over a lot of these things. There is clear evidence, I think, that U.S. intelligence has been interested in the phenomenon from very, very early on. One of the things I found at the center was a report from Maine. It was largely a basic close-up sighting, but nothing spectacular about it. Yet somehow that sighting made it to the CIA, and they wanted to have a file on it. It's inexplicable, but that's the way it is. And it was probably partly due to the person inquiring on behalf of the witness in this story. It was Senator Margaret Chase Smith, who was, I think, the first woman to ever hold a position in two houses of Congress, the congressional seat and then a Senate seat. And she's quite an eminent person in her day. She's a representative from Maine, and the person contacted her, and she went the extra mile to find out if the government was curious about this. And strangely enough, they were. The CIA wanted a copy of the Air Force's intelligence report on this.
Isn't that curious?
For what, I don't know, but that's what they wanted. And guess what? I tried to find that report. If you recall, in 1979, the CIA, there was a lawsuit filed against CIA for their records, and something like 900 pages of documents were released. They said that was it. That's all they had. And that was under a court order. So I go into my files where I have that block of documents that I picked up in the 1970s when the case was settled. I take a look. I don't see this main case anywhere. It's not to be found. It's vanished from their files. Now, what does that mean? Did they lose it? Does the CIA lose things like that deliberately? Well, who knows? But apparently they didn't want the connection to the Congresswoman on file in their location anyway. The Air Force had it.
Oh, that is interesting. And I've got to have you back because we need to talk more about this. And we've got 2 minutes to show close. And I want to just give a shout out to Paul Dean, who you work with, and he has UFOs documenting the evidence. He writes great things. And
Paul, there's a big block of files I found at the center. I just didn't have time to do, but I told Paul about that, and I said next time I get there, I'm going to run the rest of it off.
And that's incredible. And I've had Paul on the show. I should have both of you on together. That would be a great show. But Barry, thank you so much for being here. And if you are wanting to get involved, preserving history is of the utmost importance. And I know that I will help you through Barry, through Jan. We will do this together. This is imperative. Stick around for Willie Miranda coming up next week. He's going to have Daryl Sims, which is totally cool. Or this week. That is rad. So I'm sticking around. Daryl is just recovering from a stroke, and I'm glad to see that he is feeling better. And then we've got the Military X-Files and then Solaris Blue Raven coming up. Stick around. I'm going to have another great show. Thank you, Barry Greenwood. Thank you, Christopher O'Brien. Have a good night, and I'll catch you next week.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at UFOclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of